Hey, everybody. Welcome back. It's Mainframe Comic Con. We are in the final hours. I hope everyone has enjoyed the scintillating conversation we have had here at Mainframe. You see underneath me the Hero Initiative scroll. I want to remind everybody to please donate to the Hero Initiative. As my guests likely know, the main part of fundraising for Hero Initiative happens at live conventions. So they've literally lost more than 80% of their funding because there ain't no shows. You got stuff like us. That's why we're happy to direct people to give proceeds to the Hero Initiative, heroinitiative.org. If you're watching on the Mainframe Comic Con live page, there's a button underneath to donate as well. But we are here today to talk about NeoText. I am reading right from the press release that David Hyatt has provided me. This is very exciting. This company is dedicated to publishing short-form prose, ranging from science fiction and noir novellas to investigative journalism and narrative nonfiction from a variety of acclaimed artists and celebrated artists, some of which are represented by our panel today. So I'm going to go through and one by one add all to the conversation. First up, and I'm looking forward to talking to all of them, it's Chloe Maval, everyone. And Chloe, I hope I'm saying your name properly, but welcome to the conversation.
Hi, no problem. Yeah, you got it good enough.
Okay. I got a weird last name as well, so don't sweat it. There we go. Next up, Adam Roberts is joining us. Good to see you, Adam.
Hi.
It's a pleasure to meet you. One of my buddies in illustration and animation as well, Jim Afood. Jim.
John,
how are you? I'm doing all right. Last time I saw him, I lost my wallet, and I was in a pure panic at Rose City Comic Con. So yeah. Jim under much calmer circumstances. So that's great. Let's see here, and I just want to make sure we get it. Okay, so next up, Nick Minuti.
Right here.
How do you do, Nick? It's a pleasure to meet you.
You too.
I'm doing all right. Excellent. And finally, one of our legendary creators in comics and television. It's always a pleasure. It's Howard Chaykin, everybody.
Hi, John. Hi, everybody.
Hey, buddy. Good to see you.
What's up, man?
No lie, folks. I'm very excited about this initiative.
Except for Adam, all of us have really fucked up names difficult to pronounce, don't we?
I'm letting the sign down. I feel really bad.
You know,
I'm going to change my name by default to something with a lot of Z's and Q's in it.
Say again?
Our ancestors did a job on us at Ellis Island, I always say.
No. The Ellis Island failed to do the fucking job on us.
That's right. You're right.
You know.
End of the day. My brain is scrambled. But honestly, guys, I really am excited about this project that you're all involved in. I'm a massive fan of, looking back at the classic pulps that had incredible spot illustration along with, at least the memory of those stories are fun. And maybe the basic themes. I'm sure Howard has devoured a lot more than I have. And they don't hold up, do they, Howard?
I bullshitted my way through that stuff for years. I've never read that junk.
Really? Okay. Fair enough, man. Well, I've had other conversations. Certainly Ed Brubaker and I were talking about his new comic novella, Pulp. And yeah, the research he was doing, he's like, a lot of those stories don't hold up, man. But then it's why this is a great opportunity to bring back the format of that, but doing it with modern writing and modern art. So, Chloe, tell us about your involvement in the project. What are you contributing?
I am doing a lot of the long-form journalism for the site and kind of talking more about the deep dives that go into how these parts of pop culture, like with comics and genre literature, tie into kind of how we see the world now and kind of how we can relate to them in the world now, even if they were written 50 years ago. Like, how does that translate? And especially if it's new novellas and things like that, how is it being updated? How are these genres growing with the times? And how are the people that are writing them growing? What kind of voices are coming out into these genres now? And getting to talk to some of the people that are involved in that has just been incredible, amazing, wonderful.
Yes,
There's a whole new diversity of voices coming through.
I was going to say, what a boring time to be attempting this. Right? I'm so sorry that more wasn't going on to help you with ideas.
Oh, no, no big deal. There's just 1,000 books that we can compare to everything that's happening right now that have been like so many things that were just way before their time. I mean, we have the piece up there right now. Not saying I'm excited about it, but the Judge Dredd piece that went up, that's like, oh, I'm a huge Judge Dredd fan. And then reading it over, it's like, oh, wait a minute. How does this tie into police brutality? Let me count the ways. It's not And there's so many books that you can do that with that fit into sci-fi and fantasy and all of these things that it's becoming more and more relevant as time goes on.
Understood. I that Time magazine essay about the place of superheroes in today's society comes to mind. And,
oh yeah, absolutely.
And the debate that came after it, absolutely. So no,
there's a lot to dive into right now.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to come back and I'm curious to see what we're going to get first from you. But first, I want to introduce Adam and say, Adam, what contributions are you making to NeoText?
So I've written a novel. It's called The Compel, and it's illustrated by Francois Scoyton, the French, Belgian-French graphic artist and artist, and that was the main sell to me actually. But John Schoenfelder, who's involved in NeoText, contacted me and he said, "Would you like to collaborate with Francois?" And I said, "Of course I would. This would be fantastic." And I'll get to go across to Paris a couple of times and hang out in Francois' beautiful Montparnasse apartment. We talked about how he would illustrate it using his distinctive style and the kind of stories I might want to tell. And it's a very flexible format. What NeoText are doing. It's not a 1,000-page monster that you have to spend years writing. It can be 20,000, 25,000 words, maybe 40 or 60, depending on what the story needs. And I found it really stimulating. I mean, I have to say the one thing, speaking as a Brit, speaking as someone sitting here in England, it's everyone in America seems so upbeat and positive, and everything's amazing and fantastic and superb, and it's a little disorienting for me. I'm used to dealing with British publishers. And if a British publisher says, "Well, no, that's not too bad," then you think you're doing really, really well.
Oh, Adam, we're doomed. Trust me on this. It's all an eye.
It's all an eye. Absolutely.
Fucked.
Hold that thought out, Jim. I imagine. Are you writing?
Golden chalice, motherfucker.
Jim, are you writing as well as drawing? I mean, obviously, you're a great artist, and I always look forward to whatever you do, whether it's in animation or straight up comic art. But yeah, so how are you contributing to NeoText in all ways?
Yeah, well, thanks for saying that. I illustrated a book called Sorcerers that NeoText released, I think, about 2 weeks ago. It's a fantastic fictional piece about it's kind of like hip hop culture meets the occult, sorcery, street culture. Fantastic characters, and they basically gave me the freedom to do these illustrations and the cover to the book without much art direction or interference. It was basically like John from NeoText sent me the script, and I did a cover and 14 interior illustrations without any sketch approval or anything. So it was like I got to design the characters and do it my way, and that's the way I produce my best work. So everyone was happy. I was happy, and the book's out in digital form on their website, and I believe they're doing a print edition as well.
That's awesome. I'm looking at the press release now. It came out on August 4th, and co-written by Maurice Brodas and Otis Whitaker.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool, man. Well, and again, if it's got that hip hop element, they came to the right guy as far as the art goes. So that's
It was a blast. I'm proud of the work. It's awesome, and the story's fantastic. It's great.
Awesome, man. That's excellent. And again, it's already out, and I'm submitting at the NeoText website for $2.99, and I guess hard copy coming soon. Nick, tell us about your contribution.
Oh, certainly. Well, John actually is the main reason that I got involved. He actually was the editor of my first book, and we'd always been looking for a way to work together again. And about a year and a half ago, he called and sort of explained to me what he was doing, and I thought it was, like Adam said, I thought it was tremendously exciting and innovative. And so my role there is I started off writing novellas. I have 3 that are done and in varied stages. And in fact, Mr. Chaikin did the art for one of them, or is in the process of doing the art for one of them. And then also, I also collaborate with John, because one of the things that's so interesting about how NeoText works is that, basically either John sort of will come up with an idea and then sort of seek out the proper writer or there's a writer he's really anxious to work with, and then, you know, they'll have an idea and then that'll get batted around. So I would say in addition to, you know, the novellas that I've written, I also will sometimes come in dependent on the need to sort of help streamline the story.
Very cool. That's awesome. Howard, I'll let you describe the story you're doing directly with Nick. And also, I don't know, are you also writing as well as drawing, Howard?
Yeah, he's taking advantage of every aspect he can of my career. John and I have known each other for a couple of years. You know, I've watched him eat, he's watched me eat. I've done 15 illustrations for a story of Nick's. I think Scrap is what we're talking about.
Correct,
and
yeah.
He's also publishing a number of long-form essays that I've written about contemporary culture, as well as a number of interviews I've conducted with everybody from SF writers, crime writers, comic book people. And I literally, within 20 minutes ago, I finished the breakdown sheet of the next major project I'll be doing for him, which I suspect might be, depending on whether it gets out the gate first, the first original comics material that he's published on the site, which is a major crime piece, which I'm pretty excited about. And so I'm deeply committed. Unlike Jim, I like interference from an editorial, and I kept demanding it and getting none, which kind of pissed me off. I need to have a backboard. I mean, I hire an editor for my work because I think John, you and I discussed this, and because I'm pretty disciplined, but I also like to have someone to work against. And we are finished with the illustrations. The illustrations are done in collaboration with Don Cameron, who is a former assistant of mine, now a colleague, and he's a CGI master. And we did a series of 15 digital paintings for the material. And we're pretty excited about it. And,
that's fantastic, man. Yeah, go on.
I think the site just presents possibilities that are fairly endless. I'm as I said earlier, I'm not a huge pulp reader. I only pulp stuff I read with any regularity was the Burroughs material, which is like one of the stations of my cross. But to a genuine extent, I mean, I've done variations on themes of the pulp material, but I've never been able to read this stuff. The stuff is just unreadable junk for the most part. But I really like the core characters.
This is such heresy.
I'm not interested whatsoever. What's that, heresy?
Yeah, and that's fine. And I'll let Howard finish his point, and then I do want to hear a counterpoint. That's fantastic. Go on, please.
I mean, it's like mainstream comics. It's 15-year-old boy's idea of reality, and my professional commitment is to do genre material that addresses and introduces the sort of stuff that people like Alan First are doing, that Larry McMurtry were doing in westerns. I can't read SF or fantasy anymore because it makes my head explode. But I really like crime fiction a lot and historical stuff, and that's sort of where I'm at.
Okay, and this is great. I feel like a political moderator right now. Adam Roberts, your counterpoint, please.
You say, Howard, if you read SF, it makes your head explode. Like that's a bad thing. This is the joy of the genre. Is it can make your head explode? Surely.
No, not in a good way.
Yeah, I was going to say perhaps it's more like frustration. I'm assuming. I've been nominated for a Hugo. I've been nominated for a Nebula, and I sort of got weaned away from science fiction in the mid 1970s by Archie Goodwin, of all people, who said, "Don't read that crap. Read this crap." And I did. And to a certain extent, I take that Tom Dish essay that Dish wrote a couple of years before he died about science fiction very much to heart. I feel that science fiction is cheating on reality to a profound extent. And that's why I can't watch the West Wing anymore, because it's cheating on reality. I mean, it's trying to find an optimistic perspective in a world which denies me optimism. Interesting. Wow.
Others' mileage obviously different.
I may be showing my SF naivete here, but when Mr. Chagin's talking about Burroughs, he's talking Edgar Rice, not William, right?
Oh, I can't William. I owe my career to John Carter of Mars. I mean, I read my first Martian novel the day before my was bar mitzvah, and it changed my life. I want to see something going on,
Well, Chloe, I mean, again, I don't even know how much old stuff or in this format that you've read before. And again, you're coming from to it from a journalistic standpoint. God, I'm blanking right now. Jim or anyone on the panel, who's the great Fantagraphics journalist that does his stuff in comic form?
Joe Sacco?
It is Joe Sacco. Thank you, Jim. 10 points for Jim as we move on to geography for the next subject. Absolutely. Chloe, what do you think about that? I mean, yeah, and honestly, have you seen other journalists work with illustration in this format?
A little bit. It's something that seems to be happening a little bit more often. I think that a lot of journalists are finally starting to explore using a visual medium, but I haven't seen anything really officially published yet. And that's kind of what I'm hoping to see from NeoText, like in terms of what I like, to be honest, because I see people all over Twitter turning their experiences into these little like 4 or 5 thread long comics about their experiences working with these things. And it's just like, oh my God, please collect this. Like there are so many people that this would resonate with. And honestly, it might get more people wanting to do it themselves and more people working in the industry with a more diverse background and diverse voice than maybe what we've been seeing consistently in journalism and kind of in comics and genre literature for the past couple of decades.
Yes, I agree. Like it or not, I do think the market from a creator standpoint is expanding, and the people that Howard has gotten board with and the ideas, there's still an audience there. But also, I do think the other publishers are taking advantage of that and this new group of readers who want something different. So, no, I get that. And yeah, I mean, Jim, is this a different opportunity in terms of, being able to illustrate something like what you're working on as opposed to, again, what you normally get?
Yeah, I mean, I'm used to either writing my own stuff or in comics, writing based off a comic book script. So this was really the first time I was handed like a 90-page completed novel. And John and I kind of figured out what parts of this novel should be illustrated. Out of the 14 interior pieces, which are the most visually striking? So it's like I made my list and then I compared it with John and we kind of picked out those key moments. And then it's up to me as a narrative visual storyteller to decide what is that shot? How in storytelling do we show these characters? I had to design the characters as well. It's the first time we're seeing them in a visual form. So, I mean, all of that, it's just world building, which I do with my own books. But I was also kind of thinking of Maurice, the writer, and trying to, I didn't talk to him about any of this. So to me, in the back of my mind, it's always like, I hope Maurice digs this. Like, I don't know what he's imagining our main character to look like. This is what I think he looks like. So the fact that I turned everything in and didn't get any negative response from John or Maurice, they just said, great. I feel like I did my job. So far, so good,
That's cool. All of you, I'm curious. I think that all publishers right now are reconsidering the traditional comic format, which currently stands at 20 to 22 pages. We're seeing the price point get to $5 a book. And man, I'll tell you, as someone who's been, buying this stuff for 40 plus years, my $10 doesn't give me the amount of material that I want. And I do love what seems to be, based on the press release, that these are novellas that are priced at $2.99, which I think is a very smart price, and that we're going to get a nice full meal of a read with each of these stories. But yeah, any thoughts, and really a jump ball as far as where the comic monthly magazine format is, and then is this a dying way of telling stories?
Well, I think on the contrary, and that's where we've come back around to the big history science fiction, the kind of overview, sees it as this small scale kind of pulpy thing, the stuff that Howard finds kind of unpalatable, written by hacks a lot of the time, until Star Wars in '77, and suddenly it becomes enormously commercially successful as cinema and as television. And cinema is now populated entirely by comics. It's all DC and MCU. comics-based stuff. So the stuff that's really selling, much as I love Star Wars and the Star Wars universe, it is. Jim puts his finger on it, actually. It's not just the visual art, it's the design. It's the brilliance of the world building and the design and the designs of spaceships and all that kind of stuff. This is a time for comic art in the broader sense to really come into its own in the science fiction idiom, I think.
Yeah, but I can speak directly to what John is saying. The monthly franchise is in I fear is dead. The comic books as they exist today are a flea that's on the tail that wags the dog. I mean, the only genius in comics, as I've said more than once of late, is Kevin Feige, who's been able to monetize to the tune of billions, millions spent on material, 99.99% of the people spending that money having no idea that it exists. I live in a small town. I know all my neighbors. Most of them have no idea what I do for a living. When they find out, they can't even begin to wrap their head around anybody doing this for a living. And I've been doing this for 50 years. And I love comics. I truly do. I like the process more than the content of late, certainly. But I just finished. I'm about a week away from completing the entire last issue of the second arc of Hey Kids Comics, which is a Roman Clef fictional history of comics. And it's 6-issue arc. I don't think seriously believe it'll ever be published in the format in which it was originally conceived. I think it'll go out digitally in chunks, but I think when it sees paper at all, it'll be in a trade. I think one of the results of this particular miasma-based apocalypse here is going to be the diminution, perhaps, and potential death of the monthly book, of the mainstream comic book as we've known it for 180 years or so. I don't see it surviving.
Well, and that's why I like. Go ahead, Howard.
So small. There's no reason for it to survive. It's like LP collectors. It's a tiny niche market.
Well, and that's why I think, honestly, Adam, what I do think this product is different from the monthly comic because it is a bigger story, chunk of story than the one chapter of a 5 or 6 part story that we get in the monthly comic book. And also, I think it's at a good price point. Are they going to release these in an anthology way, kind of like a McSweeney's or anything like that, in addition to selling it separately? Do you guys know?
I do not know. All I know about Sorcerers is when we announced it and released it, all my fans hit me up on social media and said, "Oh, it's just digital right now. Like, where's the print one?" Because people still want the copy for their bookshelf and they want to see the art on paper. So I had to hit up John and kind of say, "Hey, the digital for $3 is great, but ironically, people still want this kind of stuff on paper as well." And he said, "Yeah, don't worry, we're doing a print version as well, but having the launch with digital for $3, I feel like 90 pages with 14 drawings, that's a pretty good deal."
It's a really good deal. Yeah.
Anyone can throw down $3 and just get it and look at it and see what it's even about, But go ahead. Sorry, I feel like I interrupted you.
No, not at all. Absolutely.
There's also a continental European angle here, isn't it? So I bow to your superior expertise when it comes to what's happening with comics in North America. But the bande dessinée are still event publication, prestige products in France and Belgium and across Europe. That's one of the great things about working with an artist like Francois. He's this kind of superstar. Not so much in Britain, but in France, he's very famous. I mean, I know he's famous. You all know who he is as well, but even outside,
I'm with you, man.
Yeah.
No, and also, again, as you point out, the European format is a bigger media read where 2 volumes, album by album, can come out of a longer story, and it's a satisfying enough read that you're getting a bigger chunk of story. And that's why, literally, Adam, the North American product, like I said, it's 20 pages. It's one chapter of 5 or 6. And also, I mean, yeah, depending on the writer too, sometimes that first issue, it's not enough. And I think it's a tough sell. And that's literally something I look for on creator-owned stuff. I mean, Marvel and DC, they got their audience. I mean, as Howard says, it's a small percentage compared to the movie and TV watching audience and everything, but so they're kind of used to the format. But no, really, I mean, obviously we are watching the local comic shop market die in North America, And God only knows what's going to happen at the other end of this pandemic and who can survive. These small businesses are no different than restaurants and barbershops and these other places that, again, the brick and mortar life is very difficult. And I get what you're saying too, Jim, in terms of that people are disappointed. I really do I buy half and half. I buy digital and I buy print. And I like the convenience and just, I mean, art looks incredible to me on a digital tablet. Howard, when you draw now, do you worry about, or do you think in terms of how it's going to look digitally versus paper?
I'm with everybody so far that I like paper in my hand. I truly do. But I read almost everything I read now that's text on a Kindle. Simply because I bought a Kindle for travel. Before this lockdown started, I was on an airplane at least twice a month, and I read all my fiction on a Kindle. I still collect paper magazines, but the fact of the matter is, the thing that NeoText does, I think it offers an alternative and an option. I think the idea, as Jim said, of laying out a $295 price point on a product that would normally sell for a good $3 or $4, $5 or $6 in paper at the minimum, is a great place to start. And the option to choose at the back end as to whether and when. I love that idea. I truly do. I'm an old man, and I'm old by a lot. And the truth is, I take very seriously the fact that I live in a younger man's world, and I compete on the younger man's terms because I have to. I don't work because I have to. I work because I want to, and that want means that I have to accommodate the world in which I live, as opposed to, stand on somebody's lawn, yell at kids, stay off my porch. That's a bunch of bullshit. I'm not a curmudgeon. I'm a contrarian. And the fact is, I have to accommodate the world as it exists. The world will not accommodate me. And I'm here for that. And if
Chloe,
future, as long as I've got a future, I'd like to fucking live in it.
I'm it, buddy. Chloe, forgive me for stepping on you there, Howard. I didn't know you weren't done, but I noticed this week The Last Western is coming out, which is another journalism piece. Roni Tempest presents the gripping true story. I'm reading obviously from the press release of Puerto Rico-born undercover officer gunned down by a white Wyoming lawman in 1978. And the notorious frontier trial that followed. It's called The Last Western, and it comes out on 2 days from now, the 18th on Tuesday. So, yeah, that sounds really cool, and it speaks to what you were discussing in terms of using journalism in this way.
Exactly, and honestly, that kind of storytelling in general, kind of looping back to what these guys were all just saying, I think that comics, sure, the monthly comic is not nearly as successful as it was 20, 30, 40 years ago. But where the market is shifting is this place where graphic novels and graphic novellas are doing insanely well. Creator-owned projects, indie projects, a lot of the smaller publishers who are putting out these really intimate graphic novels are just brilliant. I mean, it's a little bit of a hack, but I mean, look at the Eisner's list this year. It's none of the superheroes that you would expect to see because everybody's batshit over DC and Marvel. It's all of these. It's
all good, buddy. You can swear. It's cool.
It's all of these comics by indie creators who are doing something more personal. They're making it more focused on people of color, more queer, more gay, all of this stuff, all these things that are really, really important, and that's doing really well. And there are a lot of people that are also kicking it back to this kind of vintage style of doing comics. And I think that's why NeoText is going to succeed so beautifully in this, is because it's, again, another alternative to the big two or big three, where it is something new, and it is something kicking it back to retro and bringing it somewhere new while placing it in. I'm trying to think of a good way to put this. Placing it in a place that is familiar enough that people will want to buy it, and especially at a good price point. But it's a good alternative to just watching superheroes run around in their undies all day.
The great thing is Howard and Jim have been doing this so long, and forgive me, guys, and including yourself, Chloe, but I ask all of you, and I'll start with Chloe, in terms of, do you already have a base audience that you are bringing to NeoText with your work? And truly, that's for everybody. Like I said, I know Howard has his following. Jim has his following, but Chloe, I'll start with you in terms of that.
I mean, anybody who wants to read it, and that's part of what I'm planning. Part of what I'm planning on doing is bringing on a lot of freelancers as well to work with, and I'm hoping to bring more diverse voices and more people that have a different outlook on these comics that have been around forever and how they relate to how people experience reading them now, whether they like them or they don't. They have an important voice and an important cultural context historically, and so. Anybody who's looking for that kind of criticism of film, genre literature, interviews with and spotlights on people who are like the old school and the new school. I just want to have fun. I'm an enthusiast. I just get excited about shit, and I want everybody else to get excited too. So that's who I'm looking for. People that just want to get excited about nerd shit, basically.
Sounds good. No, absolutely. And no, maybe, again, a lot of your subjects will, hopefully gather that audience. Adam, forgive me. And that's why I like I said, I'm sorry that I'm not more familiar with yourself, Chloe, and Nick. And this is why I'm asking this question. Is there a built-in audience for Adam Roberts' material that you are bringing to this new format?
Dear me, no. I'm very obscure. And nobody reads me. I mean, I published 22 novels, I think. But
there you go, man. No, come on. There you don't mess with me.
Name. I'm a pronounceable name. We've established that. It's easy enough to pronounce my name, but nobody really knows who I am, particularly in North America. I just haven't been able to get a North American deal. And I write a very particular kind of book. And I'm very grateful to John, who likes what I do. And what I do is a little bit idiosyncratic. It's a little bit, one could call it pretentious, which would be accurate. It's completely true. It's a slightly more literary take on science fiction that melds some of those kind of pulp ideas. And it hasn't made me a multi-millionaire, I'm sorry to say, as I sit here with my lockdown moustache. And I think I have enough of an audience to mean that my UK publisher is Victor Galance. They keep publishing me. So I'm kind of washing my face financially. I make a bit of money each year. I don't make enough to live on. I have a day job. I teach at the university.
Okay.
But that's not why they've come to me, I think. That's not what NeoText are hoping to get from me. One of the things I think that is quite interesting about the project more generally is they want diversity in the fullest sense, and absolutely we want writers and artists and readers of color and queer and all sorts of interesting new voices, but they also want something that's not being provided by the mainstream as it is constituted. And that's, I think, true visually, and I think it's true in terms of the kind of words that a writer like me produces. But you can be honest, guys, you'd never heard of me before I popped up in this little window.
But again, the fact that you do have your British following, and again, this is clearly an international product in terms of that it's going to be released, and that's the great thing about digital. It's global. I can attest to that from my own viewer and listenership for my little puppet podcast show that I do. So Nick, I'm sorry, forgive me. Go ahead. Go ahead.
There's nothing to forgive, man. It is, and Francois is a big name on the continent in Europe. So he's kind of a star, and he will bring people. But that's the reason why John approached me, I think, is because he wants something. He's trying all sorts of different approaches to get something new out there, and that there is the real need for that. And I'm not just now talking about comics. I'm talking about genre as a whole. In fact, I'm talking about culture broadly. There's a lot of stuff that is being rebooted. There's an endless slew of sequels. It's time for someone to do, here's a dozen brilliant new approaches to doing something. That's what this is hopefully going to do.
Nick, were you gonna? Forgive me. Are you bringing a following to your NeoText work?
I'm actually desperately in search of one.
Good for you. That's quite all right.
Which is why I now follow everyone on this panel on Twitter, because I'm hoping to just vampirize whoever follows them, because everyone here has 5,000 more followers than I do. In some cases, 10. Jim, you have a lot of people who follow you. John. The reason, in all seriousness, I think the reason that John approached me is that we have a similar visual aesthetic, and he, in many cases, is looking for a type of prose that would be they would sort of be evocative for an artist to be able to do something with. And so, he was saying that, if you can sort of try and achieve some degree of panels in the way you're linking prose, that would be, the best thing that you could do. So, yeah, I mean, what was attractive is that he's, as Adam was saying, there's a lot of genres that have sort of been if not cast aside, at least gotten a bit dusty. That didn't necessarily deserve to. It's just with and I don't want to get off on an anti-corporatist rant, but they're not. Some of them are too niche to be able to fall into a sort of global paradigm. But in NeoText, since we don't have to, although the goal obviously is global, John is creating a global brand, I think, by combining people from different countries and sort of bringing them all under one label. But
yes,
the real attraction was that, like, we're going to dust off certain approaches to genres, and we're going to try and make them work again. And that was what attracted me. That, and as I said, trying to break the 1,300 count of followers on Twitter, and potentially to crash through the 250 barrier on Instagram without, begging my kids' friends to follow me.
I understand. And, honestly, Chloe, it's likely what you're going to cover in some of your criticism and journalism. And truly, again, I want to throw this to everybody. It is interesting how the culture war has invaded the pop culture sphere. And you really do have, God, we know from a couple years ago, when was it the Hugo Awards was really kind of like where they kind of stuffed the ballot box with a bunch of really angry traditionalists who didn't appreciate the new voices and are like, basically, this is our clubhouse, get out. And that's why I am glad to hear, and based on what I am reading from the press release and hearing from all of you, that no, as Nick just said, it's time to shake these genres up, get new voices in there, and absolutely, and truly, and I know, Howard, like you said earlier too, that you're writing to this new audience, but not in terms of condescension or whatever, because no, here I am, this is what I do, and honestly, and I mean, good Lord, Howard, I mean, I know you have faced criticism from some of your more recent projects and stuff, and I'm shrugging because, again, I'm always entertained, and yeah, it's you're willing to take chances.
Yeah, but as I've said more than once, stupidity is an endowment which isn't necessarily welcome, but willful ignorance requires work, and and there's a lot of that going out there. But
yeah,
I've committed myself to a career of overestimating the audience, and I intend to die overestimating the audience, because the audience has enough people out there to pander and patronize to their own set of beliefs. I don't have to do that. One of the reasons I moved to California when I did was so I could get myself independent from having to do the things that other comic book artists had to do to maintain a relationship with the audience. I've never attached myself to a commercial character in order to create fan love, and I've never done fan service-based work because I don't share the audience's and the enthusiasts' particular interest in this material. I said earlier today that my feeling was hurt that I wasn't asked to participate in the millionth issue of Detective Comics or whatever. Till I remembered, of course, that I talk shit about this material all the time, and they must have heard. I mean, Christ. How honestly could I expect anybody to bend over to invite me to participate in a project that I hold in such utter disdain? But sometimes I'm an idiot. I mean, I don't depend on the audience's affections or its sensibilities. I just can't. Because for the most part, they're secondhand opinions and they're received ideas. They don't, for the most part, comic book fans and comic book readers have been infantilized over a 50-year period, and that infantilization gets in the way of identifying new material. As much as I cherish what Chloe is talking about in terms of this new independent model, I still feel that I wish that some of that independent material would be developed and produced in such a way that identified the existence of a language. In too many cases, I've found that a lot of that work feels like the equivalent of Mickey Rooney and Judy Garland putting on a show in a barn. that it lacks an understanding of the language that exists before it, and that there's a language worth learning. That the subjective relationship with the audience in comics is one of the things that I feel has been lost dramatically over the past couple of years. The fact that it's a six-pronged process, and the reader has to be a part of that process because he's the engine that turns the page. And I'm a great believer in that. And I can't take seriously people who criticize me on the basis of through the scrim of mainstream material. We're talking about a Roadrunner Coyote model for the narrative. And fuck that shit. Who cares? You know, I'm loving doing the work I'm doing, and I'm grateful for the fact that I'm still vertical and and capable of doing it. My skill set still functions. That's all I read. Gore Vidal has just joined us.
I know. I was going to point that out and then click on it. I'm glad Drew did.
He and Herman are beating the shit out of each other in hell right now.
The fake Gore says, I've been reading and supporting Mr. Jenkins' work since 1983. When I was a kid, reading American Flag, the characters and the world enchanted me. I didn't have to relate to it to enjoy it. And certainly American Flag, a very cutting edge and very counterculture book for its time, and continues to be today.
Again, it's very kind.
No. But let's talk about that in general. Jump ball again, everybody, in terms of, how the culture war is, part of the conversation now with pop culture.
Well, sorry, Chloe, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, I kind of speaking to what you were saying, Howard, I think that there is a deep appreciation for the language that was used. And I think that is kind of like comics that came 20, 30 years ago are what made it possible for people to make these independent comics now, and to be able to use new language and be more brazen and kind of create a wider audience, or even to make the audience more like acutely pinpointed so that there's something that people can relate to. And I can understand the idea of audiences feeling infantilized, but I think there's also an intimacy that has really come for a lot of readers in these independent comics, where there's a connection and a being able to feel seen and using language that people are understanding more now. And all of that is possible because of comics that came out years and years ago that people can now consider, sometimes rather quickly, like problematic and things like that. For the time, very appropriate. Some of them even groundbreaking. And all of those having existed create what we are able to do now. And so as much as there is a culture war surrounding that, it's a really important conversation to have because it's opening the doors for so much good stuff and so many good creators. And I think that's a thank you and an homage to everything that came before it.
I think perhaps I wasn't clear. I'm not talking about the subject matter or the tone of the material. I'm talking about the visual, the physical, the idea of comics as graphic design in the service of narrative. That of the understanding of creating pictures with narrative value. That the interrelationship between text and visual. Those of us who actually write and draw our own material understand that there's a dependency that exists between the two ideas. And I find too often of late that what I do is identified as something that someone can simply decide to do on a Monday morning, and by Friday they've got a career. And I've spent much of my life unlearning and learning how to do what I do to a profound degree, and bringing a sense of narrative and visual literacy to the material. I mean, we talk about Joe Sacco. Sacco is astonishing. He is just fucking unbelievable.
Yes,
he's a phenomenal writer, and his writing exists as visually as it does textually. He's extraordinary. And it extent of subject matter. His work is just brilliant. And and Robert Crumb. Crumb is being excoriated right now, but Crumb is one of the great transgressive artists of the 20th century. I put him in the same class as Judy Chicago, or as Pablo Picasso, or as Dali, that great crypto fascist. I'm a great fan of transgression. I truly am. I think that stepping over the banal and the mundane and the anodyne is one of my jobs. So, I encourage people to get out there and do whatever they fucking want, but do it well.
Amen. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. So Jim, as you said, you weren't able to initially, collaborate directly with the people that wrote Sorcerer, but and obviously they approved what you did. Adam and Nick, did you guys? Was it more collaborative in terms of the stories that you guys have produced?
Well, I mean, I can tell you what happened when I first went across to. I got the Eurostar from London to Paris, and I met up with Francois, and it was wonderful to meet him. And at the beginning, his partner, I think partner not wife, was there because she speaks a bit of English to translate for us, and I speak a bit of French, but I speak French like an Englishman, which is not good. But she obviously decided that I spoke enough French because she had things to do and she went away. So it ended up in the situation where Francois got more and more comfortable just chatting on in French, and he became more and more idiomatic and rapid. And there's only so many times you can say to a man, "I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch that. Excuse me, my pardon." So by the end, and there was quite a lot of red wine. We were in Paris. By the end, I really had no idea what he was saying a lot of the time, but it was very nice, and we had a great time. And it seems to have worked out okay, that as a creative collaborative process where it's not all entirely rational, and we haven't laid it all out according to some Excel spreadsheet. We had some connection that transcended language, perhaps. Perhaps that's it was a good thing. And he's a really nice guy, and we hit it off very well. So the process was, I mean, I wrote my thing, and John got it translated in French so that Francois could read it. But then I was revising it quite a lot. So he was working on an earlier version of what I'd written, and it didn't seem to matter. The illustrations that he's come up with are amazing. They're powerful and wonderful.
Excellent. Nick, any thoughts on your collaboration?
Yeah, I would say that, well, two things. One, so only one, the piece that I wrote was that did not, the art came much later. John, I would say in my experience with it, John tries to keep the overlap between the writer of the text and the producer of the art to some extent isolated, because I think he doesn't want either one of them necessarily infringing on the other. I can say in my case, he also told me that Mr. Chaikin was terrifying and that I should just be happy I don't have to talk to him and just give him the text and let him have it. And he said he will yell at you. He's very scary. And maybe he was right. No, I'm
grandfather, for fuck's sake.
But yeah, no, I would say that's one of the things that was so interesting about John's model and the NeoText model is it does really provide a tremendous amount of autonomy to both the person who is creating the text and the person who is doing the art. And in fact, I offered at one point when I said, if Mr. Chaikin comes up with anything, I can go back into the text and reinsert it if something really pops out to him. And he's like, yeah, you're going to have to do that. He's got ideas. So, so there is a synergy there. And just, can I ask a question going back to the culture war thing? Not to, I don't want to reignite that, but I think the one question I would have, does anyone?
Yeah, I'm actually open to it. Please.
Does anyone actually think that part of it is that, comics to some extent, it used to be like a sort of middle class kind of thing, and with the hollowing out of a middle class, it's sort of like in all industries, you have now sort of one just sort of monolithic culture that they're trying to just sop everyone up, and then you just have the offshoot. So it seems like in so many different pursuits, there's just been a sort of ripping apart of any kind of middle. Like it seems like even in movies, right? Like they either cost 300 million or 10.
Right.
Or in television, it's either, I think I read somewhere David Fincher said that like movies can only afford story and television can only afford characters. And, so I'm just wondering how much do you think of what you're seeing is sort of the result of a completely diminishing middle and everybody sort of fighting over the recognition that they want to get out of art since they're certainly not getting anything financial anymore?
That's an interesting observation. I think there's validity in that thought, actually. I really do.
That's a conversation you and I should have in another context.
Yes. Okay.
It's an interesting and valid idea. It really
Yeah, don't waste it on me, man. That was
Oh, John.
I'm messing with you, man.
When you mentioned the sad puppies thing that happened with the Hugos a few years
Yes.
back, I think what that really crystallized was the same situation that's true in my country, which is half the country is in favor of Brexit and half the country is not. And in the US, half the country are absolute dyed-in-the-wool Republicans and half the country are absolute dyed-in-the-wool Democrats and liberals. And there is no common ground between the two. So what happened in science fiction, I know science fiction is only one genre, but science fiction is divided between fans who are just quite right-wing. And those are the fans who want military science fiction, they want scientific accuracy, the laws of physics prove my ideology is correct, there's no such thing as a free lunch, that whole crowd. But then there's a whole other bunch of people who love science fiction because it's about the alien and otherness and encountering otherness and weirdness and hospitality to the alien. And they're trying to find ways of expressing and articulating the fact that we are now this melange globe. We're not separated into our little villages anymore. We're now encountering all sorts of different kinds of people and different kinds of lifestyles. And science fiction is really well suited to that. I mean, I'm obviously unbiased here because that's the reason why I love science fiction. It's not to denigrate the fact that there are lots of people who have genuinely thought through right-wing opinions who find science fiction this completely other thing. But there are two science fictions and they are kind of at war, which is what happened in the Hugos.
Agreed. I was going to get to this, Drew. I'm sorry. Say it again, please.
No, I'm starting to rant a bit, so I shall back.
Not
up.
at all.
In the comic book, where there's a war going on between a bunch of right-wing guys and the rest of us. And what I find fascinating is that I'd love to see these right-wing guys actually produce a good book. You know, I'm always interested in seeing stuff. As I said earlier, do whatever you fucking want, but do it well. And everything I've seen from these guys is clown shit. I mean, it's just nonsense. Like, what the fuck? I mean, it's like, I mean, it's Eltingville Comic Book Club bullshit at its finest, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to be devil's advocate, and I suppose I'm looking at historical examples rather than stuff that's going on right now. Robert Heinlein was a good novelist. Lovecraft had a kind of genius to him. They're really unpleasant human beings in terms of their political opinions, it seems to me. But they produced interesting art. I suppose the question is whether that's happening now, whether that's something that's characteristic of 21st century cultural.
Any 11-year-old American boy who's not a fascist until he's 13 is not paying attention. And Starship Troopers defines, it's like it's a boyhood dream of, you know, and then you outgrow it. I mean, it's so, and I grew up reading Campbell, I grew up reading Heinlein, all those guys. And I loved it as a kid, but, you know, give me a sword and a radium pistol and I'm good. But then I turned 15.
I get that. And Jim, Drew, don't worry. I was going to get to this question for Jim. Huge fan of your work and with a strong style in general. However, I feel often at times the industry as a whole tends to shy away from strong illustrative style. Do you find that?
Well, sure. But I mean, the answer to that is you just carve out your own niche and do your own thing and create your own. I mean, as played out as this is to say, you just create your own brand, and then you hope that the people will follow you through whatever you put out creatively, which is kind of what I've done. I just kind of crafted my own audience. But yeah, I mean, when there was comic book conventions and I was in Artist Alley, I definitely know that my style is not the style that most people walking through that Artist Alley are going to gravitate toward. They're used to watching Marvel and DC movies, so they gravitate toward a more computery, airbrushed, very clean, crisp style. And I'm doing the exact opposite. I'm doing like my Sienkiewicz, Ralph Steadman-y, splattery, scratchy, expressionistic, indie style. But that's my thing. That's how I stand out. That's what I want to do. But does that grab the eye of most people? Maybe not. But I'm not really interested in converting people that like buy Deadpool hoodies at the con onto my I'm interested in the people that have like the cool record collection and watch old 70s exploitation movies.
Attaboy.
That will gravitate toward my work. And bringing this full circle into NeoText, John caught on to that. And the first conversation we had on the phone was just about the movies we like, the records we like. And it wasn't even really about the project. It was just us talking shit and being like, hey, I like you. I like your vibe. Like, let's try and work together on this thing. And as soon as I read the script, I was like, man, I'm definitely in on this. So, I mean, that's how you find your brothers and sisters in arms, man, and craft your thing and then put it out into the world and see who you can get to join your army, you know.
That's awesome. This is why I am truly intrigued by this initiative, and I really think NeoText has its finger on the pulse of where things should be going, but at least evolving and including people, and I think that's great. As we close, I do want to give everyone an opportunity, if you know when the release date for your individual works are coming out. And Chloe, I don't know. Do you know when your first piece is? Yeah, exactly.
I have a few pieces up right now already.
Great.
I have a piece up discussing the similarities between the history of Judge Dredd and what we're seeing with police brutality in the current state of things.
Oh wow, that's
amazing. It's a lot, and there's a great interview with Jim Mahfood right there, and there is also an interview with the acclaimed sci-fi author David Gerald.
Of course, the man behind The Trouble with Tribbles. Good Lord.
My heart.
Among other great things he's written, but that's not the best thing that I can mention. So, yeah.
But there are plenty of other pieces. There is going to be an analysis of Alejandro Jodorowsky's The Holy Mountain going up this week.
Fantastic. That's awesome.
And if my brain's not done melting, that should be good to go, and everybody can read that. And I'm hiring on some freelancers soon, so we'll get lots of different voices over the coming months.
That's excellent. No, and I'm really honestly beyond what I've read in the press release. That's great to hear that there's other stuff that people can go to. NeoText.com, is it that basic as far as website?
NeoText Corp.
Thank you.
CORP.
Indeed. Maybe Drew, could we type that up on the chat and let everybody know? But Adam, tell us, if you already have existing stuff up or when your release is.
So my novel's called The Compelled, and it's illustrated by Francois Scruton, and it's coming soon. I think it's in the next couple of weeks. It's coming out in 2 installments because I ended up producing quite a long piece of work. But I think it's coming. I mean, I should know the date, shouldn't I? But I'm woefully unprepared. But it is, it's 1 a.m. where I am, so I'm about to fall asleep.
I'm sorry, man. I know.
That's okay. It's fine.
Yeah. So Jim, when's your stuff out, Jim? And I'm looking forward to reading your discussion with Chloe. That's great.
Yeah. Sorcerers is out. It's available on the NeoText website. Print version coming soon. I'm doing more stuff with those guys, and we're discussing it right now. And people can follow my daily adventures at Jim Mahfood on Instagram.
That's excellent. And Nick, when does yours and Howard's story happen?
I think. Well, now that the art has been turned in and the copy editing is done, I think when I talked to John, he was hoping by the end of the year that he could get it out. Potentially maybe a little bit before, but definitely by the end of the year. And then the other 2 pieces that I worked on, the art is still being completed on them. So I would say mine is probably by the end of the year.
Excellent. Howard, are you doing, like you said, beyond illustrating Nick's piece? Are you when does your possible stuff come?
It's an interview that was conducted with me by the fabulous Michael Tisserand on the site, and I assume that they'll be dropping some of the interviews I've conducted. I'm going to be delivering a first pass at this huge comic book project that I'm working on, probably to John tomorrow. So I don't really know. It drives me nuts that I'm not that no one's haranguing me to get stuff in. I like being harangued so I can say no. I love the idea that when an art director tells me a job is due on Friday, I know full well they've got till Tuesday. They're lying sacks of shit. So you basically stretch it out, right, Jen? Come on, how it works. Yep. So I mean I don't know, but I'm having a great time doing it, and I feel that it's an opportunity to sort of take a step into an unknown landscape, And you'll know it's winning when there'll be imitators of it coming along sooner than you think. I don't doubt it for a heartbeat.
I completely agree with that. I think a lot of people will be following the NeoText format and hopefully, yeah, and generate more interesting stuff. No, honestly, guys, all of your stuff sounds incredible, and hopefully you'll come to Word Balloon and we can have one-on-one conversations about some of the works that you're doing. Truly, it's a pleasure to meet the three of you that I hadn't met before: Adam, Chloe, and Nick, and Jim and Howard. It's always great to see both of you, and I'll be bugging you guys all four of you. I got to make sure I'm counting correctly. Five of you, pardon me. So I was told there'd be no math today. But thank you very much. It's really been a great discussion. I hope it's held your attention. It certainly has held mine. NeoTextCorp.com. Already great works up there that you definitely want to check out. And thank you for your time. I hope everybody had a great time at Mainframe Comic-Con. I'm not sure what rooms are still running as we head into possibly the final minutes, if not the final hour. So check them out. Support the Hero Initiative. And thanks a lot for listening today. I appreciate it, and I think we had an amazing conversation. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks to all of you. My life has been transformed.